rare and balanced view on politics in today's world. Based on facts, born of rationality, common sense, and logic, providing context on today's events. This is American Perspective with Rick Thomas.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to American Perspective. I am your venerable and most humble host, Rick. Well, my goodness, we had quite the week of news and in the news cycles. It seems like I couldn't keep up with half or, well, maybe 3/4 of the stuff that was running around in the news this entire week. Things have slowed down a little bit. Of course, it's the weekend and it's a Saturday night, of course. So, you know, things that we have, it's actually a bit of refreshment, I'll be honest with you, to take a breath and a breather until we start all over again. However, that being said, I have seen some indications that some of the air that initially hit the Harris-Walz campaign, that some of the air might be starting to come out of it. And so the honeymoon may possibly be coming to an end. And by honeymoon, I mean all of the leftist lunatic morons out there who all jumped on the Harris bandwagon because of the fact that she is not Joe. They are now starting to realize and take stock and go, you know what? I know she's not Joe, but she may not be the best person or best pick either to take on Trump. And I'm not talking about the polls, because the polling, the polls and the polling and everything else, they are what they are. And like I said, you can't necessarily trust the polls, okay? But what you can do, though, is you can look at things like trends. And as of right now, let's be honest, neither campaign is really doing, all that stellar. Now, keep in mind, Trump hasn't necessarily been on the trail. He had a little bit of a hiccup getting out to Montana, which, of course, the left jumped on and was all over and everything else with regards to, Montana and the number of people that came out and so on and so forth. But the reality of it is that even though Kamala Harris has picked up some, admittedly fairly large venues, as I pointed out to you yesterday or the day before, some of that excitement had to deal with the person who realistically was headlining. It was sort of like, here's a free concert featuring Kamala Harris. She's also recycled her speeches. There's been video out on the socials where she gave the exact same speech, both in Atlanta and Wisconsin. And not just sort of on the same topics. Literally word for word matched. And so this gives us an indication that she can't go off script, that she can't do things outside of the very basics when it comes to speaking in front of people. She can only change the tone and inflection of her voice. She can't necessarily change the topics and speak what is called extemporaneously about different things that are out there. So, eventually that's going to come out. Once she gets in front of a camera without a script or a teleprompter, she'll be shown to be the complete and utter moron that she actually is. I've got some of that, plus I have a little bit more with regards to Walz and the stolen valor stuff, which is not going away, by the way. It's not going away. And also, I do not have a question for Whiskey tonight, which is fine. You guys will get to them again when you have a moment to pick them back up again. So let's go ahead and get things kicked off. Tonight is definitely not Karen on deck for leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance. So I would appreciate it if you don't mind. Please stand, remove your hat if you're wearing one, place your hand over your heart, and let's follow definitely not Karen from Rumbleland in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Thank you. Definitely not Karen for that wonderful rendition. If you would like to hear yourself reciting our wonderful Pledge of Allegiance right here on this program, you can do so by recording yourself saying it and then sending me that audio file. Send it off to my email address, fans, F-A-N-S, at AmericanPerspective.online. That's fans, F-A-N-S, at AmericanPerspective.online. And I will get that and get you into the rotation. All right, tonight's sponsor is the Institute on the Constitution. The Institute on the Constitution was established in 2004 as a 501c3 nonprofit with one singular mission. That is to restore the constitutional republic through grassroots education. All courses and materials are developed using primary source documents and taught from the American view of law and government as defined in the Declaration of Independence in the following 3 key points. 1, there is a God. 2, our rights come from him. And 3, the purpose of civil government is to secure and protect our God-given rights. The IOTC offers the opportunity to educate yourself on our most precious founding document, the Constitution of the United States. They also provide tools to educate your community and get involved with local government. Start by taking their free U.S. Constitution course and go from there. Use my affiliate link, iotc.americanperspective.online, to sign up, and while you are there, take a moment to look through their other course material and information. My affiliate link, once again, is iotc.americanperspective.online to get great content to learn about our historical founding and support the show in the process. That's iotc.americanperspective.online. Or if you just want to purchase this fabulous Saddleback leather-bound U.S. Constitution, go to constitution.americanperspective.online. Check this thing out. It has 1/8 of an inch of Saddleback leather. The internal pages are tear and water resistant. And check out that binding. We're not talking about cheap glue here. We are talking about stitching that goes all the way through the leather and the pages within. It has a 100-year warranty against material defects and workmanship. You can send it back to the manufacturer in that time, and they will fix it or replace it for free. I'm being told by my rumblers who are very familiar with this spot that it won't poke you in the buttocks when you sit down because it has thick, rounded corners. The internal pages and documents are all in numerical order using Roman numerals in order. I have also been told by my youngest whiskey warrior that it will help you pass your civics badge in Scouts. It is buddy tested, buddy approved, Billy tasted, Billy approved. And you can get yours at constitution.americanperspective.online from the Institute on the Constitution. Please go and check them out today. And I do appreciate them for allowing me to be a brand affiliate of theirs. All right. So before I get things really rocking and rolling here, let's go to the drink. Tonight's drink is the Four Roses Single Barrel. And as you can see, I'm getting down. I'm going to have to go and by something. I killed off the wild turkey the other day. I think it was Wednesday. I killed that off, and now I'm drinking on the Four Roses. I've got to figure out what I'm doing here for that. And I forgot to tell you, it is in the We the People. Checked out the background, thanks to Buddy Weiser. We the People USA. I'm sorry, Lucky Shot USA glass. It's luckyshotUSA.com that you should be able to go and get these. But it's in the We the People glass for tonight. Whew. Good stuff. Good stuff. And of course, my my wonderful wonderful whiskey warrior Bonnie, who loves the Four Roses. She loves it when I do this. When I do Four Roses, and there's a couple others, because she's really into the Kentucky Straight Bourbon whiskey. Anyway, all right, let's go ahead and get into a fan favorite of the show. There we go. On this day in American history. And of course, for On This Day in American History, we read from the American Patriots Almanac, written by William J. Bennett and John T.E. Cribb. It is chock full of all kinds of factoids and information on this wonderful, fantastic, and fabulous free place, at least free for now. Hopefully it stays free in November, but free place that we call home. Today's date is August 10th, so tonight we are going to talk about the nation's attic. The Smithsonian Institution, headquartered in Washington, D.C., is the world's largest museum complex and research organization. Composed of 19 museums and 9 research centers, its collection encompasses 137 million items. A somewhat obscure British scientist by the name of James Smithson planted the seed for the institution when he died in 1829 and left behind a will containing curious provision. It stipulated that if Smithson's nephew were to die without heirs, the estate would go to the United States of America, founded at Washington under the name of the Smithsonian Institution, an establishment for the increase and diffusion of knowledge among men. American officials were surprised by the provision, since Smithson had never set foot in the United States, and apparently he had never corresponded with anyone here. Nevertheless, after the nephew died without heirs in 1835, the bequest fell into Congress' lap. Then came several years of heated debate over exactly what to do with the legacy, which amounted to more than $500,000. On August 10, 1846, President James Polk signed into law an act creating the Smithsonian Institution. The institution's mission is exactly what James Smithson specified: the increase and diffusion of knowledge. That largely means connecting Americans to their history and heritage. The Smithsonian's holdings range from the original Star-Spangled Banner to the ruby slippers worn by Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz, to the space capsule that carried the Apollo 11 astronauts to the moon and back. The astounding assortment has earned the Smithsonian the nickname the nation's attic. Since most Smithsonian museums charge no entrance fee, one of the world's greatest collections of artwork, artifacts, and scientific specimens is free for all to see. That is today's On This Day in American History. And before I get taking off, one of our sponsors is True Grit Roots Network, and 3 Chevy is asking if the TGRN app is down. Not that I'm aware of, 3 Chevy, but believe me, if it were, my phone would be blowing up right about now. So I don't know what's going on. There might be something happening behind the scenes. I'll take a look after the show is over. Okay. So obviously, one of the things that is coming up, and this is really going to be kind of telling, because again, keep in mind, the only reason why Harris is the presumptive Democrat nominee, well, I'm not even sure we can really call her presumptive anymore, because they went and convened some virtual freaking roll call in their, telephone call in, Zoom call, whatever it was, in order to indoctrinate, not indoctrinate, but anoint her the next Democrat candidate nominee. I kind of smashed those 2 words together, but the candidate and nominee for the Democrat Party. They didn't provide anybody any chance to fight against it, by the way. That phone call, they pretty much said, you will vote for Kamala Harris, or, well, I didn't even think there was an or, to be honest with you. But anyway, so, yeah. There's a couple of people, honestly, that are in the Democrat Party there's a few that are not going to necessarily go to Chicago. And this is really curious, to be honest with you, because you would think that they would want to go, but apparently there's reportedly some Dems who are in some vulnerable seats. They're planning on avoiding the Chicago convention and the Harris-Walz coronation. This in red state. And the story that is being peddled, of course, by the Democrats and their propaganda arm, otherwise known as the mainstream media, is that all Democrats are just giddy over the fact that they have Kamala Harris, Tim Walz as the presidential ticket. Well, all the giddiness, of course, will be on display in a little over a week when the Democrat National Convention begins on August 19th. And my mom was asking me when it was, so I've got to remember the 19th. But anyway, but it doesn't appear that everybody is on board with this. Those who are all in will attend with bells on, but what may be more interesting is those who are going to be no-shows. For an example, Sherrod Brown has announced that he is not going to be there. Now, he says he often skips conventions, but according to @says Simonson on X, he's been there every single time save one since 1984. So what does that tell you? That he's actually skipping it. So the reason why he skipped that one was it happened in 1992, according to this, and after some guy died at a party that he hosted at the 1988 DNC. So he skipped it in the 1992, probably just to avoid criticism. But there's some other Democrats who are also not going to be going that are part of the toss-ups in November. Sherrod Brown, I already mentioned. John Tester in Montana said that he will not be going there either. Senator Jackie Rosen in Nevada is scheduled to attend a campaign event with Kamala Harris on Saturday, which is today, but she also has said that she will not attend. So, yeah, this is kind of interesting that there are some people who are not going to make it. So, for an example, Sherrod Brown is only up by 4 points in his race against GOP opponent Bernie Moreno at the moment. Tester's opponent, Tim Sheehy, has a 2-point lead, which that is where Donald Trump went to go stump for him. In Nevada, Rosen is barely hanging on to a 3-point lead over Army veteran Sam Brown. And the Senate is not the only place where lawmakers in tight races have found other things to do during the week of the 19th. Democrat House Representatives Yadira Caraveo in Colorado, Jared Golden in Maine, Josh Harder in California, and Marie Glusenkamp in my wonderful state of Washington will also skip the convention. They are all among the handful of House members on the Democrat Congressional Campaign Committee occupying seats that need a little help in order to remain in their seats in November. Others on the list claim to not have finalized their schedules. So what does this tell you right now? I don't know. It might mean that they probably don't want to be a part of the pomp and circumstance, and that they are looking to try and shore up their seats potentially. Certainly makes you go, when it comes out to that. Especially when Harris is being named and Tim Walz is potentially being named also. So moderate Democrats, and most of these, by the way, are attempting to be moderate Democrats. But moderate Democrats are really a dying breed. So I'm not sure. According to The Hill in this piece, Republicans have a 78% chance of winning the Senate and a 61% chance of winning the House. Not necessarily overwhelming numbers, but it's definitely enough to kind of spook some of these senators and House members that are in risky districts that can't afford to show up at the convention. So there might be a substantial number that are not willing to die on the Harris-Walz hill, let's say. So that's the first kind of indication that there things might be slowing down. But here, just announced, and this is kind of a real big surprise in California. California is deep blue. Democrat California state lawmaker switches to the Republican Party. Marie Alvarado Gil says she switched to better serve her constituents and that she was elected to serve the public and not a political ideology. So now she is a state-level lawmaker, and she announced on Thursday that she's switching affiliations in a bid to save the state from heading in the wrong direction under a Democratic supermajority. Now, I also want to point out, too, that Governor Gavin Newsom, or as we like to call him, New Scum, has been seen for photo opportunities going out and trying to clean up homeless encampments. And I've also heard through the grapevine and some of the news outlets that he is actually now starting to talk about fining municipalities, or I should say not fining, but withholding state funds from those municipalities that are not cleaning up these homeless encampments. It's an election year, folks. It's an election year. So all kinds of things are going to be occurring all throughout this time. But so this state senator, Alvarado Gil, who represents the state's 4th Senate district, said she joined the Senate Republican caucus in the party after deep reflection and to help in their fight to fix California. Yeah, she makes the claim that the status quo under the supermajority Democratic rule in the legislature is simply not working for this state. So there's some interesting little quirks that are going on in some of the states, some of the deep blue states that are happening here. Now, obviously, they are pushing, or they push back the state Democrat State Senate President Pro Tem Mike McGuire said her decision would be disappointing for the voters who elected her in 2022. They trusted her to represent them, and she's betrayed that trust, he said in a statement. However, Alvarado Gil, who represents a largely conservative-leaning rural district in northern Central Valley, said the decision was right for the constituents that voted me into office and was about putting them first. I don't really know one way or the other. If it is for him, for her, for whatever, I don't know. But, yeah. She is just making a few waves. But it could be an indication, too, that things are starting to crack in the Democrat world, in the Democrat realm. So there's a couple indications. I got a couple more here for you, but I've got some breaking news. No, it's not the Russians. It's not a Russian collusion hoax. It's not even the Russians that are hacking the DNC, like what you saw happen or saw happen to be claimed by the DNC. But there was a hack that happened. And here we go, folks. This stuff like this is going to keep going and keep happening, and yeah, it's just going to be all kinds of problems here. But check this out. Iran has apparently hacked the Trump campaign and has obtained a file on J.D. Vance, according to a Trump official. Now, the Islamic Republic of Iran, who is the world's leading state sponsor of terrorism, has reportedly hacked Republican presidential nominee Donald Trump's campaign. Politico began receiving internal campaign documents from the campaign late last month from an anonymous AOL email account that used the name Robert. The emails contained internal communications from a top Trump campaign official that included research the campaign did on Senator J.D. Vance and potential vulnerabilities that he may have. The research dossier was a preliminary version of the file that the campaign used to vet Vance, something that is, standard political practice, of course. When the publication asked the anonymous account how they received the documents, the account responded, "I suggest you don't be curious about where I got them from. Any answer to this question will compromise me and also legally restricts you from publishing them." Now, Microsoft, of course, they use Microsoft. Microsoft published a report this week that confirmed that Iran was interfering in U.S. elections, particularly in swing states, though highly targeted activity online designed to sway, through highly targeted activity online designed to sway voters in those states. Microsoft said that the Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, called the IRGC, which is a designated terrorist organization, sent a phishing email in June to a high-ranking official on a presidential campaign from the compromised email account of a former senior advisor. The company did not identify which campaign had been targeted, but now we know that it was a Trump campaign that was targeted. So this kind of stuff is going to happen more and more. I mean, realistically, people, you really have to pay attention to your online presence and your online security. You have to watch out for when you are being sent emails from nowhere, to not open up on them, and definitely don't click any links if you do not trust the source that is sending them. So the Iranians, according to Trump campaign spokesperson Stephen Chung, he said these documents were illegally obtained from foreign sources hostile to the United States, intended to interfere with the 2024 elections and sow chaos out our democratic process. On Friday, a new report from Microsoft found that Iranian hackers broke into the account of blah, blah, blah. And I already told you about that. But he added that the Iranians know that President Trump will stop their reign of terror just like he did in his first 4 years in the White House. Okay, so those of you that think that Iran is, for Trump, or that Trump, is a representative of these regimes, especially things like Putin and so on and so forth. Yeah. No, he's not. Never has been. They don't want him in office. Putin doesn't want Donald Trump in office. He wants Kamala Harris because Kamala Harris is easily manipulated. She is a moron. She will work with the Russians like Obama did, like Hillary Clinton did with the Uranium One scandal. So, yeah. Anyway. Also, too, if you remember, the federal authorities announced also this week that they arrested Pakistan national Asif Raza Merchant in New York City on July 12th for attempting to carry out a murder-for-hire scheme that allegedly targeted Trump. Yeah, okay. All right. So anyway, well, we all know that the polls that were out there, the polls are starting to show a swing toward Harris. And again, like I said, this could be potentially the honeymoon period. We can't necessarily trust these polls. It's a little early for us to take a look at those polls and think anything necessarily of them. Well, there's some other polls that are coming out that are showing that there's some cracks in that are showing some cracks in the support for Kamala Harris. And we all know that Kamala Harris passed over Josh Shapiro, who would have made a lot of sense, honestly, to be her VP pick. He's in a key battleground state, being Pennsylvania. But the one biggest problem that he did have was the fact that he is Jewish. And so to bring him onto the campaign probably wouldn't have been the best thing in the world for the Kamala Harris campaign, because of the Palestinian or the anti-Israeli pro-Palestinian contingent that she is counting on to show up for her in November. Well, now she's going to reap the whirlwind, potentially, reap the whirlwind in terms of that decision. So here in the Blaze Media, which of course pointed to a Fox News article, there is a poll that came out from Siena College Research Institute on Tuesday that found that Jewish Americans in New York are starting to turn away from the Democrats. Okay. Starting to turn away from the Democrats in the presidential election. So in June, Biden had surpassed former President Donald Trump among likely Jewish voters by a margin of 6%. But in a new poll, Trump has now garnered a slight lead, 50% to 49% among Jewish voters. The net slide of support of 7% from the last poll lends credence to pundits saying the extremist pro-Palestinian wing of the Democrat Party is starting to drive away Jewish voters into the open arms of the Republican Party. Well, that's what they should be. They should be coming over here. I mean, seriously. We support Israel. We support, the right to defend themselves. We support, arms and everything. The Biden Democrats are not, like I told you the other day, They are still in an embargo, and Kamala Harris reportedly is potentially looking at something like a complete stoppage of sending arms to Israel. Anyway, so apparently many saw the decision by Harris to pick Minnesota Governor Tim Walz as her vice president over Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro was a concession to the anti-Israel fringe of the party. It was. Let's just, I mean, no, it's not the Democrat far left are anti-Israel. That's it. Let's not sugarcoat it. They keep trying to sugarcoat it. It's not. They are anti-Israel. They support the Palestinian wing and the Palestinian protesters. They support the idea of a two-state solution, which, ironically, the Gazans actually had since 2006. And they decided to kill it on October 17th. I mean, this is, yeah. Anyway, so even, I'll just tell you, Ben Shapiro, I listened to his program. He actually is even asking the question, how can any Jew, any Jewish religious person go and follow or at least reconcile themselves to voting for this ticket? Because they are seriously anti-Semitic. I don't know. Well, of course, nothing these days seems to make any sense, honestly, anymore. But it's not just that voting bloc that might be a bit of a problem. As I've told you before on this program, I dedicated a good portion of a recent episode on this, about the whole part of deciding that, first of all, Kamala Harris is not black. She doesn't have any documented evidence of being black in her heritage, her own father, which is where that would come from, by the way. Her own father even says that he is of Irish descent and some undeterminate origin. I've already told you and explained to you and showed you in his own words where he wrote in an essay to one of the Jamaican newspapers with regards to where he comes from. And even he doesn't call out the fact that he is coming from some sort of a what would be considered a black heritage. Now, of course, here in America, for whatever reason, we seem to recognize black as being African American. That doesn't necessarily hold true, by the way. I mean, you can be black from other countries, but to call Kamala Harris black is disingenuous. That's almost as bad as calling, Elizabeth Warren Native American. Totally disingenuous. It just doesn't work because she isn't. She just isn't. There's no documented evidence of her ever being black. And voting for somebody just because of someone's skin color or gender is completely, in my words, moronic. That's part of the reason why I use the hashtag #OnlyMoronsVoteDemocrat, because there are so many people who are saying, well, I want a woman president. Why don't you pick the right person, the one that's going to carry us into the future, who's going to get us out of this economic slump, who's going to potentially keep us from getting into World War III? I mean, these are all important issues. Who's going to help seal up the border? Who's going to keep us from turning into a Marxist, leftist, socialist hellscape that Tim Walz and Kamala Harris are going to give us? That being said, I apparently am not the only one. And granted, like I've said on this program, I am pure European white boy. I can't be anything else. That's where I come from. But, and by the way, unlike Kamala Harris, I actually have documented evidence of that all the way back to when my ancestors came here in the early, and I'm talking early 1900s. But there was some questions that were sent out, or there was obviously people who go out and ask others about this and about the whole black situation and whether or not they're going to vote for her. And here is this was a Newsmax individual who went out and did this. Well, here, let's just go ahead and take a look at the video, shall we? It's about 2.5 minutes. Let's go ahead and take a look.
She's using her color. I thought that Martin Luther King said the color wasn't the issue. I thought it was the content of our character that we were supposed to be recognized for. But if she's going to keep running on that color, she's going to have a misconception about how black people really roll.
If you bring somebody into office that looks like you, but then continues to detriment your community, what was that for? But if you choose somebody who can raise your community, then you chose the right one.
Wait,
so
who do you choose?
Personally, I choose Trump.
I'm looking for who I think is more qualified to run the country. That's all I'm looking at.
Black Latinos are starting to be a little bit more critical. They're fed up of their hard-earned money going to illegal, undocumented people.
Kamala Harris did not do a good job on the border because from what I know, a lot of people were coming from the other side and doing a lot of bad things to what we call home.
I think she's not a good candidate for president because she's with Joe Biden for the past 2 years, a wreck up in New York, you know.
Colors don't matter, man.
Right, they don't.
Ask God, man.
That's true. So what do you think about a candidate that uses their race as a selling point? Do you think
That's some weird
that's weird?
You lost. You lost already, 2024. If you racist today, you lost. Nobody going against Trump.
It's not about race, it's about what they provide for the society, is what they could do for the community.
With her putting a lot of black Americans in jail for the marijuana, they're not really going for her.
We also got people's thoughts on Trump's recent comments on Harris's ethnicity.
She was only promoting Indian heritage. I didn't know she was black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known as black.
Yeah, she was Hindu when it suited her purpose, you know, and now that she's running, the black vote suits her purpose. So, like Trump said, you know, now she's black.
Donald Trump is absolutely right. Her mother's Indian, her father's Irish Hindu, and she's always presented herself as Indian.
What do you think about Trump saying Kamala Harris is black? I thought she was Indian. She was saying she was Indian.
That's my response. Trump is an open book, yo. Facts.
That's just Trump being Trump. I don't believe he's racist. I don't even think he has a racist bone in his body.
Trump said that Kamala Harris always portrayed herself to be Indian, and now all of a sudden she's saying she's black.
Right? Nah, she's really Indian. She just want our support. She's trying to snatch our support away from Trump. But that's not how that's going down.
Well, that's quite interesting. So, the honeymoon may be over. Well, I mean, seriously, it's... identity politics is starting to fade on a lot of these people. They're starting to wake up and realize that identity politics isn't that effectual anymore. People, as that one individual said on the streets, it's 2024, folks. It's 2024. There shouldn't be any of this. We should be completely beyond this by now. This is absolutely ludicrous that we are sitting here even remotely talking about the idea of a demographic of skin color. A skin color is an immutable characteristic. It doesn't mean anything other than what a person happens to look like. That's it. There's nothing special or non-special about skin color. There isn't. And for those who still in this day and age categorize people by that, they are on the losing end. They are on the losing end. And I think people are starting to wake up and realize it. So the Kamala Harris honeymoon may very well be a little bit over with regards to all this. I just don't see it. I see a lot of people who are like, oh yeah, you know, something feels different. I mean, shoot, John Cryer, famous celebrity from 2.5 Men and a couple other things. I mean, he's just like, yeah. He's a far leftist. He posted on X things about how he feels this movement. And, you know, and I, of course, kind of responded with a donkey taking a big crap in terms of a meme. That's the kind of movement that you're actually feeling. It's a long way to go. We've got, over 80 days, over 85 days. I think we're like 80, 87, 88, something like this. And yeah. So, Outlawed Dogs over on Rumble points out Obama's identity politics are failing them. One of the things you need to understand about Obama is that he connected together a coalition that they keep trying to bring back, and they just aren't. They aren't bringing it back. They're attempting to, but I think they're going to have a problem trying to put it all together, because that was one of those once in a lifetime kind of coalitions of voters that I don't think is going to establish very well. And keep in mind too, as far as this whole honeymoon phase and the whole thing with regards to Kamala Harris, she hasn't done a single interview. She hasn't done an open-ended, real conversation with hard-hitting questions and removal of the teleprompter or the script. You've seen videos. I've shown you videos on this program of her taking extemporaneous questions and just failing completely. Like, we're talking about the passage of time, the significance of the passage of time. And you know what's significant about the passage of time is the significance of the passage of time. That's what she is. That's what she does when she doesn't have clear, concise talking points laid out for her. She is completely lost. And once she gets to a point where she is going to, and it's going to happen, I guarantee you it's going to happen. That debate on September 10th, that's going to be eye-opening for a lot of people if she doesn't step forward and take any kind of an interview ahead of time, like a real interview ahead of time. And this is going to be a bit of a problem. And she's going to have some challenges. I mean, even if, as Midwest Gunner points out here, Ms. Midwest Gunner says, no doubt ABC will pass the Harris campaign the 9-10 debate questions in advance. Here's the thing. Even if they do, the problem is you have the firecracker that is known as Donald Trump. That firecracker, okay, that firecracker is going to throw a monkey wrench into that whole thing. I can almost guarantee you that. And she will be exposed somehow. Nana of JJS on Rumble asks, what day are we on since she became nominated and still no interview? 21. We are on day 21, folks. By Monday's show, it'll probably be day 23. So anyway, well, another thing that isn't disappearing, and speaking of disappearing, hang on just a second. I've got to shut the door to the studio. Hold on. So here's one of the things that's happening is this whole thing about the stolen valor for Tim Walz is not going away. People grabbed onto that thing, even yours truly, grabbed onto that thing from the beginning and have been hounding him on it ever since. In fact, he went and posted on X that he finally got a selfie with the esteemed vice president, and he posted this picture. And I responded to him and said, hey, where's the selfies of all those soldiers that you took to Iraq? Oh, wait a minute. You didn't ever go to Iraq. Folks, a lot of people don't seem to understand how serious this is for the veteran community. And by that, I mean the real veterans. By a real veteran, I'm not talking about somebody who's actually been to combat. I'm not talking about somebody who is, served longer than somebody else. I am talking about the people who come out and provide honor and loyalty and ethics and values to the uniform. Those that served honorably, regardless of where you were at with it, who respected the uniform, who respected the chain of command, who respect the fact that when people come out and lie about their service, they need to be called out on it. Okay? They need to be called out. Now, I was never in combat. I served 4 years in the United States Army, but I was never in combat, and I will never ever claim as such. I've talked about this on the program before. But at the same time, though, there is a lot of respect that even people who haven't gone to combat, they have a lot of respect for those that did go, because we are, as who've never gone, at least understand that there is a huge price that is paid. Whether you're injured or not, there's a price that is paid up here for those that go. Now, the thing about it is that this is not going to go away. This is not going to go away. And what's worse is when you start having others, especially those in high-ranking positions, starting to call him out on it. Check this out. This in the Federalist. Highest ranking enlisted veteran ever to serve in Congress blasts Tim Walz's stolen valor. Whoops, sorry. My cursor was on the wrong spot. Representative Tony Gonzalez said, quote, I was under the impression that he was an E9, so when I learned the truth, I was like, are you kidding? Gonzalez, who was from Texas, entered the 117th Congress in 2021. Tim Walz was already serving as governor in Minnesota after his 6 terms in Congress. But on many occasions, Gonzalez heard about Walz's claim to be the senior-most enlisted member to have been elected to Congress based on his service as a command sergeant major, which is an E9. The discussion never really bothered him at first. Himself a retired Master Chief Petty Officer who was also an E9. For those of you that don't understand, when you hear this E9, E8 kind of thing, every rank in the service, okay, has a designator. And it's designed in order to make sure that it's a pay grade, okay? To be an E, that's called enlisted. To have an O, that's being an officer. Okay, or commissioned officer. So in this particular case, E9, E8 is the same across all of the military branches. So if you're an E9, you are being paid the same as another E9 in another branch. So if you're an E9 in the Army and you're matched up with an E9 in the, in this case, the Navy, you're being paid the same. Okay. So again, keep in mind, E9 is pretty high up there, all right, in terms of that. In fact, I think it might even be the top enlisted at this point. But anyway, so Gonzalez, being a Master Chief Petty Officer, E9, recalls hearing about Walz and says, I'm not really the type that cares about this sort of title or brags about my service, he told the writer in a phone interview. But in recent days, as more disclosures about Walz's service have come to light, it dawned on Gonzalez and his team that he was the elected representative who was actually entitled to that particular honorific, being the highest enlisted, senior-most enlisted service member to have been elected in Congress. And he says in a tweet Thursday evening, Gonzalez said, I proudly served 20 years in the United States Navy with multiple deployments to Afghanistan and Iraq. Retired as a Master Chief. Yes, that makes me the highest ranked enlisted service member to ever serve in Congress. A claim that Walz falsely paraded around. It is important to call out dishonesty. He went on to call for Walz's withdrawal as the Democrats' presumptive vice presidential nominee. So in their interview, meaning the writer's interview, barely an hour before sending the tweet, Gonzalez minced even fewer words. In my eyes, that's stolen valor, an affront to the honor and distinction of those who have legitimately earned their stripes through years of dedicated service. Now, obviously, veterans all understand the importance of being clear and concise on things like this, okay? And nobody who served forgets his duty history. Now, Gonzalez said this, what upsets me is how it shows a pattern of dishonesty. If he's going to lie about something like his rank and service, what else is he lying about? It's part of the culture of being in uniform. To erode that integrity and the fact that he's willing to do that, it makes my skin crawl when you have politicians that will say and do anything. He also emphasized that the rank of E9 is just different. As the highest enlisted rank, making E9 represents a huge turning point in your career. It's not something you receive, get revoked, or forget the details of your real rank. No, this promotion is a huge hurdle, a life-changing deal, and a very proud moment, Gonzalez added. Yeah. So this isn't going away. And now there appears to be some calls for Walz to actually withdraw from the race. So this is why I'm kind of telling you that the 19th, remember, Kamala Harris was anointed during that Zoom call. Walz hasn't been anointed yet. So, it's kind of interesting. So, yeah. This is gonna continue. Walz is going to have to address this. He is going to have to do something about this. And it's not just him, by the way. In fact, CNN got a hold of Walz's former superior and did an interview with him. Let's take a listen. Now, some of his audio does go and get messed up because his internet connection goes off. So just be aware of that. But anyway, here, let's take a listen to Walz's former military superior in this CNN exclusive interview.
Is your concern that it's, go ahead, but I do want to ask this question quickly, Sergeant Major, and I appreciate your time. But is your concern about the manner in which he did not speak to you, or his decision to retire, which he, as we've talked about, he would have been entitled to do? Which causes the most concern? Because that is the focus that so many people are wondering about, whether he has done something wrong in service or done something personally to offend you.
He did something wrong in service. As I stated before, he knew the policies and procedures and how we go to leadership and address issues or discuss issues and concerns out there. Again, backing up, he had told me, no, I'm going forward. We're going to go with the battalion and go from there. So I'm under the believing, he told me he was going forward. I'm underneath that believing that he's going forward. He went around me, which he should have addressed it with me so we could help do some things out there.
Sergeant Major, this was really, excuse me, I don't want to cut you off, sir. Finish your point, please, Sergeant Major.
He went around me, and the fact is that there's possibility he probably would have realized I would have probably known it's too late, you're going forward, because we had already received our notification of sourcing. And there's one other little point out there that people say, well, he hadn't been notified yet. Yes, he had been notified. Now, there's another step out there. There's what's called stop loss. 90 days prior to the actual deployment, we received our orders. And at that time is what's called stop loss, where if you're in a position, you're going forward irregardless, unless there's some really major or process that gets you out from not going on the deployment itself. So there's that window of opportunity there. People say we never knew he was going forward. Yeah, he knew he was going forward. Had he gotten his orders yet? No, at that time he had not. As far as being a command sergeant major, as soon as he retired, or I'm going to go with the term retired, which he did, and he was eligible after 20 years to get a full retirement. He was taken out of the academy at that time. Here's another thing about.
Well, Sergeant Major, I do want to hear that. I do want to hear what you have to say, Sergeant Major. I know I want to be sensitive of your time, and your audio is beginning to break up just a little bit. But I do want to thank you because I think you've clarified a lot for people and given more information. The question now is how the voters will evaluate it. Sergeant Major Doug Julian, thank you so much.
Yes, thank you.
I should note our show has reached out to the Harris Walz campaign for comment and have not heard back.
Okay, so there's a couple of things that he pointed out here that has been running around in comparison in terms of the situation with the Walz, the Walz deployment and everything else. One of the things that's been argued from the Walz side, the Walz sycophantic followers, is the fact that he did not receive orders. Well, as you know, as that gentleman who was his superior just told you, Walz knew he was going. And in fact, Walz also knew, based on his own posting and articles that came out, okay, was that Walz was aware and told his entire command, no, I am going with you guys to Iraq. I am deploying with you. He said that. He told his commanders. He told his upper chain of command that that was what he was doing. Walz didn't do that. Walz backed out. You'll also note in that his commanding NCO said that he went around him because he, being the NCO in charge, might have, likely would have said, no, you can't retire now. So this is where, all of these people who are on the social medias and everything else that are defending him saying, oh no, he didn't receive his orders. You don't seem to understand, folks. Divisions and brigades and battalions like this, they know ahead of time because it takes time to spool up. And in the National Guard, they all have to be cognizant of the fact that these people have civilian jobs, that they are not the regular Army. This isn't their primary job. This isn't their primary function in life. They have to have time in order to notify people, get their affairs in order, to be able to notify their own work. In Walz's case, he had to notify the school district that he was working for at the time, more than likely. That he being the coach and being the teacher that he would have had to notify those folks and say, hey, I'm going to be deploying, just so you know, I'm getting ready to deploy. He knew in advance. There is absolutely no way, being that high up as an NCO, that he did not know in advance what was going on. They have higher up meetings. Okay? They have higher up meetings like that. They know what's happening. There's no way that he did not know that they were likely going to get called up and deployed. And he decided to put in his retirement papers just to avoid going to Iraq. Well, what's really sad about this whole situation is the fact that the lamestream media and the sycophantic left have all decided to turn on J.D. Vance and try to say that J.D. Vance, his service doesn't compare to Walz's. Well, here. Let me just show you an example of the audacity these people have. This is also a CNN reporter. But let me just show you the audacity these people have with this. Take a listen.
I also think that J.D. Vance, as a messenger on this, may be an imperfect messenger, because we have, as you introduced him, as a combat correspondent, which was what his title was. But when you dig a little deeper into that, he was a public affairs specialist, someone who did not see combat, which certainly the title combat correspondent kind of gives you a different impression. So he may be the imperfect messenger on that. But I also think that J.D.
Okay. So you heard what she said, that J.D. Vance didn't serve in a combat zone, or didn't serve in combat. Well, that's correct, but he was in Iraq. He may not have actually seen combat, but he was in Iraq. And he's never said that he was in combat. He said he was an Iraq veteran. He was in Iraq. Well, guess what? That same host from CNN, Brianna Keilar, she attacked the record, which, as I pointed out yesterday on it, and she got herself spanked, folks, by none other than J.D. Vance's commanding officer. Take a listen.
And I've also seen the criticism. Just going to point out that I saw yesterday where you talked about combat correspondent. And that's important to me as well. And that's not just about J.D. Vance. That's about all of my Marines, but not just Marines. All combat correspondents, public affairs Marines, combat camera Marines, graphic artists, all of those Marines and other service members whose job it is to go where the action is, wherever that is, and to tell the story. And those people, there's a hall in our public affairs school called Defense Information School of 130 heroes that served in that capacity who did not make it out of a combat zone. So that's important to me as well. That's why I'm here today, to represent my Marine, J.D. Vance, represent his service, probably try to send a message to all veterans, stand on your record, it's enough, but also defend those of us whose job it is to tell that Marine Corps story and to go wherever that story is.
So there you go. So she called her out on it. It doesn't matter whether J.D. Vance was a combat correspondent or not. He was in a combat zone. He was in Iraq. Okay? He was there. He could have gotten hit. He could have gotten shot. I mean, just like any person who signs up for the service, like I keep telling you folks on this program, everyone who served at one point signed a check payable to the United States of America in the amount up to and including their lives. You have no idea when you sign up where you're going to go or what you're going to do. You have literally no clue. But the fact that J.D. Vance signed up, went and did his tour over in Iraq, regardless of whether he was actually in a firefight, he served in a combat zone. He actually stood up, grabbed his gear, and took off on a plane and went over there. Walls, he chickened out. He said, nope, I'm not doing it. And he dropped out rather than going to war. So, yeah, this thing is going to hang over Walls for quite some time. This is going to hang over him forever. And I'm going to tell you, me personally, anytime I see Tim Walz talking about anything with regarding that, I'm going to be calling him out on it on the socials every single time until he comes out with some sort of statement that explains his actions. And even then, it's inexcusable as to what he did. I mean, it seriously is inexcusable to what he did. Because you people don't seem to understand, and I'm saying you people as in those who haven't served, you don't seem to understand the structure in any kind of a military unit and how much those individuals who are part of that military unit depend upon that structure. That structure being that the NCOs are, honestly, the NCOs, you could talk to Sean Parnell about this. He's combat veteran, captain. He was a lieutenant when he got sent over to Afghanistan. If you read his book, Outlaw Platoon, he explains it in the book. The NCOs are the backbone of the Army. The NCOs are the ones that get stuff done. The officers, while they serve their purpose, they are not the ones who take care of the troops and make sure that all of the troops are handled and that they will come back safe and alive. That man Walls walked away from his responsibilities when his troops needed him the most. He walked away from it. It would be no different than your grandfather when you're sitting there and calling out for help to your grandfather, and your grandfather looked at you and turned around and walked the other way. That's the kind of emotion that you get inside you when you see your NCOs turn their back on you. There's no way that this is any kind of respect that needs to be given to this man. I don't care that he served 24 years. I don't care that he served in the uniform and was honorably discharged. The minute that he turned his back on his troops, the minute that he did it, after saying that he was going to go, that this wasn't going to be a problem, that he was going to go ahead and be as that one, he was going to go forward. Yeah, he is not an honorable individual. And he is not a leader. He is, and this is also evidence over the fact that he let Minneapolis burn during the BLM riots. He's a disgrace. Everything that he did that was good in that uniform got wiped out in the 2 actions that he has had since. 3 actions, actually. Claiming that he was in war, claiming that he carried weapons in war, claiming that he was a command sergeant major retired, and claiming that he didn't leave when his troops needed him the most. This is going to come back on him. Now, to give you a little bit further of an idea of who Tim Walz is, some more things have been surfacing about Tim Walz. One of them being his food program that he keeps touting and saying, I fed the children. I gave free food to the children. Well, that program is under investigation for over $250 million in fraud by the federal government. So yeah, he gave food to the children, but he also, the food and the money apparently maybe didn't make it to the kids. And it was under his watch when that happened. His Department of Education, the Minnesota Department of Education, didn't pay attention to the food program and weren't paying attention to where that money went. Yeah, that's gone. Well, now here's another thing. I mean, let's not even talk about the whole Tampon Tim thing, which, by the way, a lot of the leftist lunatics supposedly read the law. All right. They supposedly read the law, and that law supposedly said that it was only going into the female bathrooms and the non-gender specific bathrooms. Well, apparently, and I don't know this, so don't quote me on this specific phrasing, but apparently he actually wanted it, the law and the way it was originally proposed was that he wanted them in all bathrooms for all menstruating individuals. Think about that for a minute. That is a leftist phrase. All menstruating individuals. Okay, why don't you just call them women? Anyway, so he's not only that, but he also, check this out. And I love it when the left keeps talking about how, oh yeah, there's no racism in the Democrat Party. There's no racism at all. I mean, we just think that black people can't get driver's license. We just think that black people, need help and assistance, like the Oregon governor at the time, Kate Brown. went ahead and said, no. We don't need to worry about high school qualifications for anybody who's a person of color. We're just going to absolve them of that. But yet they, at the same time, turn around and say that, oh, white people, they have white privilege. White privilege. Well, let me just tell you, folks, this guy really has dug himself in deep. I'm telling you, he really has. Here in the Washington Free Beacon, as Minnesota Governor Tim Walz signed a law mandating racial quotas throughout the state health department. I kind of thought that we were done with that kind of stuff, that it was illegal to discriminate, according to the Civil Rights Act, that it was illegal to discriminate. Yeah. So apparently the law set detailed requirements for the ethnic breakdown of 5 different committees. Now, this was before he was tapped, obviously, to be Vice President Kamala's running mate, but he signed into law a bill that established racial quotas throughout the state's health department, from a requirement that 2 members of a pregnancy task force be Black or African American, to rules governing the composition of the Health Equity Council. The legislation, which Walz signed last May, created race-based membership requirements for 5 separate committees. I'm not going to read through them, but while setting up additional race-conscious programs, legal experts who reviewed the quotas said that they were patently unconstitutional and would be easy pickings for a plaintiff. Adam Mortara, the lead trial lawyer for the plaintiffs in the Students for Fair Admissions versus Harvard, which was just in 2023, the Supreme Court outlawed, you remember that one, outlawed the affirmative action in college admissions. He was quoted as saying, anytime the government uses a racial classification without a compelling state interest, that is unconstitutional. Yeah. Some of the requirements that Walz signed into law are highly granular and involve multiple racial groups. The Council on Pregnancy and Substance Abuse, for example, must include 2 members who identify as Black or African American, 2 members who identify as Native American, and 2 additional members who are tribal representatives appointed by the Minnesota Indian Affairs Council. Other councils have quotas for Hispanics, Asian Americans, LGBTQIA+ people, and the disabled. It is not clear whether white people who identify as minorities are eligible for the positions or not. And of course, the Walz-Harris campaign did not respond to requests for comments. Yeah. The left, the Democrats, are not focused on race at all. Yeah. Speaking of one more thing that Walz is doing, by the way, he has been a large advocate for the LGBTQ community. Now, that by itself is not a problem. Okay, I'm just going to tell you that right now. That it by itself is not an issue. Okay? But what is an issue is when that gets turned into going after the children. Well, here, the Daily Wire reports that in 2017, Walz said that 10-year-olds could choose their gender. Seriously? My 10-year-old is lucky enough to be able to tell me what he or she would want to eat when they were 10. Thank God they're no longer 10. Anyway, so take a look at this video clip. This is from, I don't know where this came from, but he was obviously doing a speech or something. Yeah, let's just go ahead and take a listen.
Ken is one of those that gets politically charged, and I would ask all of us, and I try and do this. I try and do this for my own sanity, and I try and do it because I think it's the right thing to do. Putting ourselves literally in the other people's shoes and wondering why they're doing what they're going to do. And when I think through this, when I say this as a teacher, there's about 150,000 of our children identified in our schools, in our public schools, trans students. And as a teacher, my number one responsibility in the classroom was the safety, security, and belongingness of every single child in that classroom. And if this child, for those who have concern, and I will not minimize people's concerns who are concerned that this is going to make an unsafe situation, whatever, I ask you that in many cases, these are children my son's age, a fourth grader, a 10-year-old, who just wants to go to the bathroom, and their identity is they are male or female, and they just go in that bathroom and use it.
So, yeah. Yeah, really? I know 10-year-olds. I mean, again, I've raised 2 kids, 1 male, 1 female, who, you know, at 10 years old, they didn't really care, to be honest with you. Yeah. This guy, I'm telling you, this guy is a far leftist lunatic. He is crazy. And he also, by the way, that was in 2017, but he also maintained that his extreme positions on child transgenderism after being elected governor in 2018. He signed legislation allowing the state to seize custody of children whose parents refuse to provide so-called gender-affirming care. Now, keep in mind that term, gender-affirming care, is most often tied to things like mutilation of a child's genitals, taking out certain parts, putting on certain phalanges in order to affirm this person's thought processes at a young age when they're already confused. Okay? Well, anyway, the treatment regimen also includes puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones, which can render children permanently infertile. And, of course, as Becky points out, thank you, Becky, I was going to say that, but I'll let you go ahead and say it because, you know, over here on Facebook, most children get over gender dysphoria following puberty. Becky is correct. Statistically speaking, children with gender dysphoria will actually grow out of it once puberty takes care of it. I'm telling you. Now, Walsh also recently signed an executive order reaffirming the legality of child sex changes. Minnesota's Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan wore a shirt to the signing that said, "Protect trans kids," with a knife across it, while a 6-year-old boy wearing a dress stood by the Democrat governor. Yeah, look, again, I'm just going to point this out. I'm going to throw this out there. Look, if you're an adult and you decide that this is the way you want to go, that's fine. It's your life. You're not affecting anybody else. It's perfectly fine, okay? And I mean, as far as that goes, you do you. That's the way the American, you know, system is designed to work. But until that time, you can't block or change or modify the way that a child develops. Get them help, certainly. I mean, if they have, you know, certain challenges and issues, you can take them to doctors and get them help. But to go and permanently disfigure somebody just because of something that they think that they are when they're not even there yet. I mean, shoot, my daughter loved dresses when she was a child. She loved dresses, but you know what else she loved? She loved diving into mud puddles. So you know what we ended up having? We ended up having dresses that were, you know, dirt stained and everything else. There's nothing wrong with that kind of behavior in a child. None. What's even more, disgusting about this whole thing is the fact that this is allowing the state to intervene in a parental situation. This is where the parents are the ones who are the de facto ones in charge. This is no different than California and their leftist-leaning state when it deals with children. Folks, this guy is a complete leftist. And do not think for any sense of and thought process for that if the Democrats get in charge, that they don't start pushing this kind of thing at the federal level, which it shouldn't even be there because the Constitution, right behind me, doesn't give the federal government that kind of power. But don't get me wrong, these leftists, they don't know the Constitution. They don't care about the Constitution. They ignore it. They want to basically burn it to the ground and make the federal government the de facto nanny state. That's what they're looking for. That's what they want. These people don't get it. They just don't get it. But let's not even go down the whole road of the abortion issue where he signed into law abortion all the way up to the point of birth. And not to mention the fact that he also signed a law that stated that if a baby was born not born, but a baby was attempted to be aborted, but yet something happened, he let her he let the babies just die. It's documented evidence of that happening, where they would just set the baby in some sort of a, I don't know, container. I don't even remember what they described it as, but they set the baby in some sort of a container and just let it cry until it died. And it's sick. It's disgusting. The whole thought process of that just makes me want to puke. Anyway. All right. Last article. This one is actually a good win. I want to end on a good note here. But this one is a good win. Now, granted, it occurred in North Dakota, so there's no real surprise here as to what this did. But still, it's a good win because if it does go all the way up to the Supreme Court, as we've seen in some other cases, hopefully they will also go ahead and side with this. So here in the Epic Times, an appeals court rules against the alcohol, tobacco, and firearms pistol brace ban. So a federal appeals court in North Dakota ruled that the ATF's stabilizing brace rule to be arbitrary and capricious, prompting further judicial review. So this was a federal appeals court in North Dakota that found that the rule put out by the BATF restricts ownership of pistol attachments known as stabilizing braces is arbitrary and capricious. This was a 2-1 decision on August 9th by the 8th Circuit Court of Appeals. The majority found that a coalition of 25 Republican attorneys are likely to succeed in their legal challenge against the ATF rule that treats pistols fitted with stabilizing braces as short-barreled rifles and subject to various restrictions. This is a good win. Again, any win for the Second Amendment is a good win. But if this continues and goes all the way up to the Supreme Court, I'm hoping it'll do the exact same thing as the bump stock ban did not too long ago, as well as any of the other major cases that have gone up to the Supreme Court and have all, for the most part, have all been overturned when they've been heard. So, good win for America. A good win for us. Good win to prevent at least some of the Democrats and their leftist thought process and regimes. All right, folks, that's it for me tonight. Do me a favor, if you haven't already, head on over to rumble.com, get yourself an account. The account is free. And once you do so, please search up the American Perspective channel and make sure you hit that green follow button to be notified every time I go live. My next broadcast is Monday, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, right here on the American Perspective channel. We have, obviously I have X and Facebook and YouTube as well, but I prefer Rumble. So if you haven't already, please go over and sign up for the account. That's awesome. Also, too, if you're already over on Rumble and signed in, make sure you hit that thumbs up button. I'd love to see myself on the leaderboard. That would be just fantastic. Have a great rest of your weekend. We will see you on Monday. Good night, everybody.
The previous broadcast was produced and is owned by Active Eye Media LLC. All rights reserved.